Waiting for that moment, that key moment.
And we're live. Hey everyone, welcome to Ask Tech Dad. I'm Brian,
And I'm John.
and we're here to talk about all things tech, family, fun, and maybe give a little bit of perspective on some things that maybe you haven't thought about with technology and your family, and how everybody uses the technology today.
Smartphones and tablets and laptops. Oh my, yes.
Everything that goes on with that. And our first pilot today, which I'm excited to launch with my friend John here, we're going to talk about what we as tech dads know that maybe you don't know.
Big mystery.
Mm.
Well, let's kick it off. Since you went ahead and led in with that wonderful intro, let's go ahead and hear your thoughts. What do you know, Brian? What do you know that I should know as somebody who is steeped in tech and obviously a great father? What would you tell somebody like me who maybe isn't as tech savvy?
So here's my 30-second elevator pitch on that topic. What I know that most people don't know is that our kids' future is not our future, and we should not prepare our kids for the future we think we have. We should prepare the kids for the future that they have.
Yeah, it's pretty deep. How do we know what that future is?
Well, it's all around us. It's really manifesting right now. We're deep in a technological revolution right now. That's actually been fast forwarded by COVID, and some of the technology that's been underutilized, that's been out for a while, has been forced to the forefront, and is really shaping the way that future generations are going to live, work, and earn a paycheck, communicate. It's all different now than when we were growing up, and a lot of people are really having a hard time adjusting. And a lot of those people that are having a hard time adjusting are making policy, and they really don't understand the future of what work is going to look like. They don't understand the future that our kids are going to have with communications. That texting is okay. These kids text each other, that they're not riding their bikes like they used to, because they've got an Xbox at home, and that's how they're getting on with their friends and chatting with their
They got
friends.
the bicycle app.
They've got they don't meet each other like we used to. Most relationships today are started online.
Well, yeah, you said something there where you talk about future generations, but it really is our now generation.
That's
And
right.
my caveat to what you said, and I'm in full agreement there. One of the biggest things that I see in our society is right now our children, after the Generation X, I mean, whatever labels you want to put, but our age where we grew up watching Atari and smartphones and the internet and all of these things come into being. Our children right now are pretty much the first generation where their entire life is now documented and probably somewhere online.
Mm-hmm.
If you recently had a child, you probably took some pictures to share your baby on social media. It's up there forever. The permanence of the internet. Now, it used to be your mom would take some baby pictures and maybe show that girlfriend you brought over or the boyfriend, here was my, but that was very limited. It's now that on a massive scale, like everything that they do, every practice, all of their learning is online, all of their socializations online, everything that they're doing, you could literally watch from the moment that they were born until they die. And there is information and data out there for them. And that's unprecedented. That's something that you and I didn't have. And that changes the current generation now. What are the ramifications of their childhood being so visible in the future and
Yeah,
for the next
yeah,
generation?
absolutely. And that's something that all of us joke about. That, like, oh man, I'm so glad that Facebook wasn't around when I was a teenager. All the dumb stuff that I did. Well, if you really pay attention to that statement, it really is around. So you have to pay attention to how the kids are using Facebook and making decisions on that, and they're not prepared for the ramifications, and we're not even teaching it because we don't know, we're not there yet. You know, we're the first generation, like you said, that is documenting everything about our lives. So their grandkids, grandkids, grandkids are going to be able to look up what they look like as a kid and not have this fuzzy black and white photo like you and I have to go to. There won't be a need for ancestry.com when you can go back a couple of generations and see exactly,
who they were hanging out with.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see all of the photos of them going through their childhood friends, and you keep
Right.
some of them don't go. That social circle is all out there for everybody to see. And then, of course, any content that they post is going to be out there. And even if you're not saving it, the internet is. I mean,
That's right.
Anybody know the Wayback Machine? You can roll it back and look at what anything has existed at one point in time on the internet.
And that's something that a lot of people out there don't know about is the Wayback Machine. The Wayback Machine is the waybackmachine.com. And you can go back in time and look at a website from its beginning and see the changes that have happened over time to any website. It literally archives the entire web. You could probably go back and see your MySpace page if anybody knows what MySpace is that's listening to this.
Hi, Tom. One of the big things also is, we see these differences in certain aspects of our society now. Obviously, it's very apparent, like you said, with the COVID outbreak. People were wanting more remote work. Your
Yep.
kids are doing e-learning. But even going back before that, it used to be the old, you want a job, you go beat on the doors. And,
That's right.
and that's not the same anymore. That's not
Right.
how it's done. Half those places wouldn't even have a paper application anyway. They'll tell you go
That's right.
online. And now you got to be thinking of different things. It's not just what you wear and making that first impression. It's hidden keywords in your resume that
Right.
get you picked up by these
And
autobots.
AI.
And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
AI
a
is
whole
viewed your
different
resume.
way of approaching, and not only just getting a job so that you can earn a living. Education, online schools, degrees are not any longer tied to you going and putting in a seat. You can do this on your own time. And this is also going to create, given the ease and convenience outside of the cost, this means that it's going to become more of a standard. You have less reason to be like, well, I didn't go to school. I was working all this time.
Right.
And now with the availability and the online resources, can you really say that? You're going to start competing in a world where there's a bigger divide between skilled and unskilled labor. And this is not to call anybody unskilled, but there is a determination in a sense of, do you have something that you're educated in that I have to pay extra for?
Yeah.
Or can I get anybody and show them how to do this? And no matter how much those two sides kind of blend, because you can really, you can teach tech. All you need is Google, for a lot of things. But do you know what to Google? Do you know how to Google those exact
How
answers?
is your Google food?
Yes, the Google food.
Yes.
All right. So I think really going forward, we're looking at changes that are unprecedented, that nobody's ever dealt with as a parent until
right.
our generation. And we're struggling with it and trying to find what works and what doesn't. So leading on that, what works for you? Tell me a little bit about your kids and tell me exactly.
So yeah, I've got a 16-year-old boy, and he is in a governor school here in South Carolina for science and math. He wants to be a biomedical engineer. And my daughter is 14, and she is in high school. And my youngest son, Trad, he is 8, and he is in middle school. And we have to constantly make sure that we are on top of their regular lives, of course, keeping them social and active. And in our house we have a rule where you have to be in one sport and one civic activity at all times. So my kids have chose scouting for their civic activity, and they have various sports. So my son plays soccer and he runs cross country. My youngest son, we're in flag football right now. My daughter is a cheerleader, and she plays music in the orchestra here locally, which is pretty fun. But all of those come with different social challenges online that we've had to work through. So not only do kids today have to worry about the face-to-face social anxiety that we had to worry about growing up, but now they have to worry about online social anxiety and the things that they have to deal with online. And the keyboard warriors that are out there are not limited to older folks. As a matter of fact, the younger kids can be even more brutal online than they can be to your face. And a lot of kids are really having to deal with that And even worse yet, you have parents that don't understand their social standing in social media because let's face it, social media is so new for everyone. Even though it's been around for a while, we haven't really grasped it yet.
Or
One
the
thing that,
impacts of it. Yeah.
yeah, one thing that I like to tell people that, most people don't think about is, the telephone when it came out. The telephone took something like, what was it? 70 years to hit critical mass where it was at several billion users. So it was all around, everybody had a telephone, everybody knew how to use a telephone. And then an etiquette came from using the telephone, saying hello. Somebody had to actually agree as a mass that that's what you do when you answer the telephone. Well, the thing about technology is, yeah, it's growing fast. Yeah, your computer is getting much faster every single year. But the thing that really is growing at an exponential rate is how quick we can actually absorb new technology. And that, so let me give you an example of that. Instagram took 2 years to reach 2 billion people. So you're taking the uptake of 70 years worth of that how to use a telephone for everyone to 2 years everybody is on Instagram, and then you look at TikTok. TikTok almost took no time for it to reach a billion users worldwide.
Yeah.
And the issue with that is policy can't keep up. The guys that are actually making policy, they don't even know how to use it,
Well,
let alone to talk to your kids about how to protect them online. So we have some. You asked me about how I, you know, deal with that,
sure.
and there's a couple of things that I do deal with that. First of all, I being a tech dad, they have always had technology. In my house, there's always technology.
Well, they're going to emulate you anyway. You can't have
Sure,
technology and
sure.
them not want it
And,
either.
and it's just going to happen. And I think at everybody's home today, everybody has an ample abundance of technology. At least most people do. Even and COVID sped this up because now every kid has a laptop that was school issued. So there's some kind of technology or phone or something that most everybody has to use. And as a matter of fact, in middle school, my daughter, who I did not give a phone to until she was 13, was actually being given assignments. And she was the only one that did not have a phone in her class to receive these assignments online. Um, so there are a couple of base rules that I have for their phones. First of all, I make sure that every app that they download, I have to approve. There are some security settings. I use Apple iPhone security settings. There are security settings in Android that you could do this as well. So every time that they need to install an app, I have to approve that app. Secondly, they have to have a password list for anything that they log into. And at any time, I am able to grab their phone and log into any account that they have. And if there's any kind of account that I can't log into, that's a punishable offense. I need to be able to log in and see what you're doing. No different than if they're playing out in the middle of the road, me telling them to not play out in the middle of the road. Just like, hey,
Yeah, but I
looking
think
outside.
you're
You're
going a
not
little
doing
bit
it.
further. You're actually erecting some barricades, some hurdles that they'd have to get to the road. And in this, I think this is
Sure.
where we differ a little bit in parenting style.
At least I know where they're going.
I spray paint the road and I tell them don't cross that line, and I watch them, but I don't put any obstructions there. I expect them to discipline themselves. When I see even adults becoming, and let's face it, technology is addictive. They have designed these things to keep your
Absolutely.
attention, and you can see whole families out at dinner or so
Admittedly,
forth
it designed this stuff.
staring at their
Yeah.
phones and so forth. So it comes down to personal discipline. There are times that you can do it. There are times that you can't. There's a time to put it down and connect
That's
with,
right.
especially with the holidays coming up. It's not a bad idea to take those phones. But whereas you do a more permissive based, I do a more, you're personally responsible. I can't be there all the time. I can't watch everything. And even if I restrict their specific phone, they can borrow somebody else's. I'm not really protecting them by not by restricting them. I'm protecting them by educating them that what they share and what they do to have the self-discipline to do it correctly. Technology, when used correctly, is a huge benefit. But as we have
There's
seen,
plenty of that in my house too.
I know there is, and I'm just saying that's
Yeah.
one bone of contention.
Education
we kinda
is,
differ, and
is a big thing. You know, we had regular talks about cybersecurity in our house. We
Sure.
had regular talks about you know, the good and the bad things of the internet. We have regular talks about consumption versus creation. That's something
That's a
that
good
is
talk.
that's something that's very unique that I don't think most people really have a talk about. Is, you know, what's the percentage of your online consumption or your media consumption versus your creation? Because creation is richly rewarded now with YouTube or whatnot. It's okay to be
what's a
you know,
career
to
path
create.
now?
It's
My
definitely a career
oldest
path.
son, he's 13, and he loves gaming. I mean, I have to remind him sometimes. Don't you think you've been on that a little bit too long? And
Yeah.
and he'll self-correct. He'll be like, "Hey, let's go outside and throw the ball," or
Yeah.
right. But sometimes I have to nudge him, and I prefer that method. But my older brother is a game designer, and he's a very successful one. And I overheard my oldest child basically asking some tips. He wants to get into that. These are viable careers.
Absolutely.
I mean, and if you spark a passion into something, that's what's going to drive you forward in life. You know, to find something you're passionate about, make a career of it, and move forward. But it used to be, you know, what are you doing in front of your computer all day? So some of these kids, you know, are making millions. They're making
Oh, yeah.
millions off of, you know,
Playing the game.
streaming,
Streaming.
Twitch,
Absolutely.
yeah, you know, esports. There are just so many things that are now careers that didn't exist. And I kind of want to back up real quick. You were mentioning how fast some of the stuff went. I just did a little bit of Google foo, and I thought it was really interesting. In 1993, there were only 130 websites, to give you an idea. So in 20 years, yeah, I mean, the proliferation of the
Oh, yeah.
internet is so far. By the year 2000, 60% of households had a computer. Only 60%. Like now, you would
Right.
think, oh my goodness,
Right.
who doesn't have a computer? Right? That'd be like not having a microwave at this point.
Yeah.
You know, this was once important technology, and that has gone so fast that it's spiraling even faster. What's the next generation of technology? Now we've seen the smartphones. We've seen, you know, now you can immediately.
Well, we're
record
talking about the
anything.
metaverse now.
Yeah.
We're talking about Ready Player One stuff, and that's really what Facebook and Microsoft are doubling down on, and they're starting to create. You remember the Nintendo glove, the Power Glove?
Oh yeah, man. I love that. Everybody watched The Wizard, I think it was.
Yeah,
when
yeah,
they
yeah.
Debuted it.
Well, I mean, they're making
Remember
that
that
stuff.
movie?
They're
They-
making that stuff for real now, where
Yeah.
people are going to be in virtual environments, and they're starting to talk about invest in the virtual environments and things of that nature. So, yeah, absolutely, the technology is changing faster than we can socially adapt to the uptake of that.
And you said
And I say
something.
technology, it's more of the platforms. It's not necessarily the technology. The phones are incremental upgrades every time, but the software that's going into this is, you know, vastly improving quickly, and we are grabbing it and we're absorbing it, and they're making it so easy for everybody to use. That was the thing about the iPad, is you could put it in front of a cat and the cat could play
Or a
with it.
frog, and it's
Or-
trying to eat the ants.
Yeah,
off the
I mean,
screen.
it's
didn't take-
so, you know, their test, I believe, was to put it in front of a child, like a 3-year-old child, and innately see if it was usable, and it was, and that's what made it so good when it first came out, for sure. But it also is enabling these platforms to be that good as well, and when it's that easy, you know, the EULA that comes up that says, hey, you have to be 13 to be on the site. People don't even see it. They're just swiping by it. So there's things that, you know, are there on purpose that a lot of us ignore as well. There are government things that I believe social media, you have to be 16 in the EU to get a social media account. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, well, they definitely have a lot more restrictions,
Yeah.
you know, in other countries. And America's kind of like, here's your gun, kid. Have fun. Hey, don't shoot your eye out. And we do tend to do that. I think it's absurd how much we pile on, but I think it's also ridiculous to assume you're going to keep this out of them, unless you're going to go be
Sure.
Amish or something, and eschew all electricity and technology. They're going to be exposed to it. So you do yourself a huge disservice as a parent by trying to stick your head in the sand, or I don't know. You need to know. You need to be active in it. You said something that always resonated with me as a fellow tech dad, which is trust but verify.
Yeah.
You trust your
Russian
kids, you
proverb.
empower them to have the ability, but you're also verifying. As much as I say, hey, the technology stops. No online after 9. This gives them time to wind down, and there's all kinds of research on it. Now, they're up in their room. I'm not necessarily poking my head in constantly, but once in a while, I'll go in and check who's online after 9. And what kind of example do I set? Because after a certain period of time, that's when everybody's fed, they're getting ready for bed, and usually the nighttime's my time.
Yeah.
And so now I'm getting on. What kind of example does that set for them?
For sure, and especially when they leave. But we kind of go a step further on that. Like, we don't have any phones at meals. You can go to any of these places you go out to eat, and you see little Johnny on his little Game Boy, just playing around, and the parents are none the wiser because they're on their phones and whatnot. And I'm not even saying that's bad, but as far as I want to have,
I'll say it.
Well,
I think that's bad.
Well, it's not our future though. So I mean, there's a point where yes, I think that soft skills matter, and quite frankly, I think in the future soft skills are going to matter even more, because the soft skills are going to be the ones that the jobs are going to stay. The nurses, the doctors, those things aren't going away, but the repetitive jobs that are here are not going to be here for long. Truck drivers are already going to be replaced. You've got McDonald's testing fully automated
kiosks.
No, not just kiosks, fully automated McDonald's, where the cooking and everything is done automated. And it's a natural thing. And like I said, COVID is actually pushing this forward. And, I believe it or not, I had a fun conversation with my Uber driver that brought me to work this morning, and we were talking about the job market, and we were talking about like the gig economy, with Uber. But there's lots of different gig economies out there, and a lot of these people that were servers and whatnot, where it's really hard to find a job now. They found out that job wasn't so stable when COVID came, and that maybe these people didn't have the culture to keep them. Maybe they didn't have the planning to keep them. How many people want to work for $2 an hour and then live off tips and the up and down of that? And then they kind of reevaluated stuff, found other ways to get stable. And one of those things is the gig economy. So you can, I've seen a girl that we use to do voiceovers for our phone systems.
Fiverr.
Yeah, on Fiverr, and she does a great job, and it's easy. It's in her home. She can do that, and she can Uber, and she can do something else. So the gig economy is there. And, another thing that is really changing is, remote, Zoom was around before COVID.
Yeah, it was.
Teams was starting, but, this stuff was around before COVID, but COVID really pushed it to where now, we used to consider outsourcing being somewhere outside of the United States. Where our jobs are all getting outsourced to China, they're all getting outsourced to India, all these call centers are going over there, stuff like that. Well, what's happening today in the United States because of COVID and because of the acceptance of Zoom, and all these companies are finding, hey, we don't need to have all this space. People can work from home. Well, now they can work from home from anywhere. So if I'm a company in California, I'm looking for a worker in South Carolina, because I can pay them a little bit more than what the local area would normally pay them.
But less than what
I would have to pay someone locally here. And now I've got someone that's just as smart, just as educated, and can do a great job. So a lot of these workers that people are vying for around here, you're now competing not just locally, you're competing nationally with these remote jobs and with the gig economy and with a couple of other things.
You're definitely going to have that. You're going to have competition. There's that old saying, employers compete with employers for employees, and employees compete against employees for the jobs. And you're opening that market. Yes, we love remote work, but when you start blurring some of those geographical lines, you're really talking about a world economy, and it's not there. And there are little holes, but you go so far. There's so much stuff that you cover in probably two breaths there. I wanted to go back to something when we were talking about, I do think it's a problem when families go out and they're all entertained. You listen, it is addictive, and there are times for that. But you must, in this day and age where you have advertisements constantly, your data is being tracked, you have any movie you want to watch. I'm now rereading and rewatching things that I never thought I'd see again. They were on TV in my childhood. Oh, but they're all there. I can buy the whole series.
That's right.
Books, any kind of book that I read that I've never seen in a store since, and I can find it on Kindle and say, man, I remember this book. I want to read that. There's a lot of that nostalgia coming in because this stuff didn't exist back then. You had Saturday morning cartoons. I think we as parents need to really put the emphasis that there is some tech-free time. Yeah. That going out to dinner or going to certain events or needs to leave that stuff behind. We need to make the effort focus on that. And I just want to go back. It's not that I think look, we all do it. I don't think that, we're bad for it.
Tell me some of your rules that you have with your kids about, the tech-free time and how that works in your household.
So again, it is not regimented. You set some certain things. I have some guidelines. Like I like the no online after 9. It didn't really succeed.
Catchy.
It didn't succeed as well as I liked, though. Yeah. It really didn't.
Right.
I've seen times, for example, we might spend the whole day doing something. We do family things. We go see their grandparents. They get home. It's 8:30. They've really been itching to play. No online. So you got to make exceptions. I mean, these are not hard rules. What I set forth for them is the expectation. It is that I tell them that too much of anything is bad. And whether it's gaming, I realize it's socialization, whether it's being on their phone when they're trying to fall asleep, and whether it's chatting. Lucius now being 13 is his social. Every time I see the kid, he's on some group call, and everybody's talking.
Chat,
and I mean for hours they're on this, and their video calls. And what are they talking about? Stuff kids talk about. It's
right.
real.
It's the stuff we talked about on phone to each other.
I guess, but we weren't really on phones. We'd be out in a circle or in the street, in the middle of playing games, but you would have these conversations, and it really has brought it back. And I just remind him that, hey, listen, I know it's difficult, or I'll see him eating and say, do you really need that? They get up to go to school and they're having breakfast. What we used to read? The cereal boxes.
That's right.
Right? They had all the facts on
them. That's all we had to read.
Well, that's what happens
now. Or the milk jug.
And I have one of those
cereal box milk jug. That was your reading material.
It really was. And, I brought this up to a couple people and not to take it to that place, but I don't take technology with me to the bathroom. People are like, what do you read? Well, there's other things that I can take to read, but I'm going to be really honest with you. It just feels weird for me to be on my phone and people will call you or text you. And I just find that that's my time. I think most people are, and I think it gives you something to do. But I would like to stay away from it and really limit myself because I think it's important that because it's just like this buffet of massive amounts of technology. You can have it in your ear, and you get the Apple Watch or whatever. Everything is integrated with it. It's nice to take a step back. Go camping once a year.
Yeah.
Shut off everything. The power goes off. That's a great time to sit around, learn to play an instrument. They must develop themselves in other ways. And I do this through encouragement. And I realize that if I make it that they can't do something, they're going to want to do it more. So I want them to learn to manage their time. I'm raising them to be adults. I'm not raising them to be under my thumb and what I think all the time. And that goes a lot to what you're saying about their future isn't my future. I'm not trying to plan their future. I'm just trying to give them the tools that they need to navigate all of this stuff and to point out, do you think you're missing it? It's like those people who go to the show and they're staring at the show with their phone because they want to make sure that they record it. So they're
watching it through their phone, not with their eyes. Yeah.
Right, and make sure that everybody knows that they went to that show.
Thing. Yeah.
And it's more important that somebody knows you went out to eat and have this great meal than you really just sitting there enjoying the meal. Yeah. And I think that's wrong. I think that, there is balance and there is a lot of power in moderation of being able to say, I choose to put down the phone. So in encouraging this, sometimes it takes very little.
Funny. We have such a different dichotomy because I don't think that all of that is bad.
It's just different.
Well, I don't think that it's bad necessarily that I think you hit on it that, moderation is a thing, but I don't think that it's bad that the phone is there at dinner and maybe you did have a good dinner and you want to take your picture and show other people where you're at. I don't care. I mean, that's how people are communicating today. I'm okay with that. There are a couple of things that I do that are a little bit more strict than you, and there's a couple of things that I feel that I'm not as strict as you.
Makes sense.
So,
Yeah.
like we have you leave your phone downstairs because we have bedrooms upstairs. You leave your phone downstairs at a certain time. I actually have the internet shut off for the kids at a certain time, and quite frankly, I have it in stair steps. So the 8-year-old is more tightly monitored than the 16-year-old, obviously. So there are different rules as they become more intelligent on how they can use that. So for me, those tools and those blocks give me a little bit of control to educate because even though I know what software is on the phone, I don't tell them they can't have the software. When they ask for the software, we have a conversation about the software. We have a conversation about how to use the software. We have a conversation about the ramifications.
So you're creating the opportunity to have the
And
discussion.
then I let them go. And I let them go for a while. But the verify part of that is I will grab a phone and I will look up their history and I'll look up what they've been doing. And then if they have been playing in the street, we have a conversation about it. Some of those conversations are not fun. Give you an example of that. Um, my kids are not heavy on social media. A lot of there's some detriment to that because a lot of their friends are, but I'm okay with that. But one thing that happened because my kids don't have Facebook. I did let them have Instagram at 13 because it's more photo based and it's less conversational. Um, but the my daughter was looking up a video game. She was looking up answers to a Zelda game, and one of the popular websites for question and answers is Quora, Quora.
Yes.
Yeah. So
It's
you
pretty
can.
innocent, right?
It's very innocent. You can ask, and she asked me for this, and I said, "All right, well, daughter, Layla, what are you going to use this for?" And she said, I'm just going to. I've been looking this, these game tips up because I want to get this bike on Zelda. Whatever, fine. So I let her have it. Let her have it on her phone, and I let her use it for a while. So a couple months go by, and I, grab her phone, and I'm just like, hey, just checking your phone, no big deal. And I come across her Quora, and she has actually gotten into Quora and made herself a profile. And on that profile, no lie, had no less than 3,000 words worth of describing herself, like describing her
Right.
location,
A
who
little bit
she
of
is,
seeking.
what she
Yeah.
is.
Right.
Hey, I'm this, I'm this,
Coming
I'm
of
this.
age. Like this
Right.
is me. Right? Yeah.
And but it's a public profile. It's not even private. Like on Facebook, you can, do your privacy. On Instagram, you can do your privacy. On Quora, it's not private, it's public. So, and then I saw the people that were messaging her, and there was this guy that was messaging her, and it fries me every day that was like, hey, and trying to talk to her, and it came to a point, and Layla's very self-aware, and she was like, hey, don't you know that I'm 13? And one of his text message back to her said, does age really matter? And she was like, yes, creep, and then deleted that. But the problem was is she created the the whole profile that attracted that, just putting herself out there innocently for other people that were her peers so she can talk to them. But it gave me that teachable moment that I could, say, hey, stop playing in the road. You're about to get hit by a truck, And quite frankly, another thing that I know as a tech dad that most people don't know is there's worse things than porn online. There's a lot worse things than porn online. Porn is like a normal function online compared to what a lot of bad things, happen online. And we're talking about all kinds of things. And I'm sure in another podcast we'll get into, the depth of maybe that subject in the future. But that was definitely one of them. You don't want creeps, knowing where your
Well,
daughter lives and what her insecurities are, or anything that they can get to you. And that's definitely something that is a cautionary tale from a tech dad that actually had to deal with that. And luckily, I had the knowledge, the skill, I had the plan
and the
and
parenting.
the parenting to be able to take her out of that and then have that constructive conversation. Um,
Well, you highlight a couple of things there too as well. Here you are, you're very active in it. You're a tech dad. You're looking at really all of their stuff. They're playing this almost permission. Mother, may I? Daddy, may I install this on my thing? They are sitting down with you. They're describing what they want, but yet still, there are parts of that technology that can then be used not for their intended purpose.
that's right.
And you can't expect kids not to be curious, not to look at these things, especially
Right.
around that age. It's hard because they're put up with all this marketing image and all of these, pop stars and young girls. I swear the clothes get less and less, and their ages get less and less. And there is this over sexualization of the internet. It goes way beyond porn. It's not the
Oh, yeah.
porn that I'm worried about.
Right.
It is the constant, barrage that you must look this way if you're not living this life. Something you said one time is, I think you said, comparison is the thief of joy. And one of the worst aspects of social media is it creates that comparison.
Sure.
So then it puts a lot of pressure on these children who are learning their social value. They're learning what roles that they fill and how they fit in with these groups, and expanding that group to so many people. There's now hundreds of thousands that they're comparing themselves to that would be outside of their local demographics and social group.
But and quite frankly, most of that stuff is fake. I mean, we're talking about deep fakes.
Now it's getting even weirder.
I mean, we could really go down this road, and I think we should really go down this road on a different podcast.
Oh yeah, this is just touching base with a lot of topics.
I mean, it's so
you've
easy.
said so many things in this one that we could spin off and go. So that's why I keep kind of driving to those points. But the core one is a story. I've known you for a while, and I've heard, and it is disconcerting. But I think for me as a father, it points out that I could do everything. I could build the perfect. Yeah, I liken it to this. I first knew I was a father and that my kid wasn't a pet. And I know that sounds bad. When I noticed that my, toddler, I think it was an infant, he crawled over to the TV and he got up and he's smacking the TV. And I said, he's going to knock this TV down. So I'm going to prevent him. So I moved the coffee table in front of the TV. And he went up to it and he crawled under the coffee table and got up between the coffee table and TV. And now it was a game. So then I went ahead and put all these pillows under there, and I look back and he had pulled the pillows out and wormed his way. And it was somewhere in playing this game, I kept going, like, how far do I really have to go to childproof this, which is general stuff.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me, you're dealing with intelligence. It's you're dealing with something beyond. This isn't something they're going, I'm gonna touch it when you're not looking.
Yeah.
And that, I think, was the first moment that it kind of hit me, the responsibility of raising another being that is going to have their own thoughts and their own ways of expressing it. And how do you help mold, shape, or guide? Because you can't force. No. There's nothing you're going to do. And it becomes difficult because they're going to face all these same pressures. And I've seen plenty of adults do very poorly with technology.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't mean you can't use technology, but you don't know how to limit. Oversharing is a big one,
Huge.
You're going.
And that's basically what she did, was she overshared her life, and just, vulnerable teen in a time, in a microcosm of her life that she overshared with this huge document.
And you hit on something else. I have both boys, 13 and 10. I don't have a daughter. I wish I did. But sometimes, there's a certain anxiety. Any father will know that, when you're dealing with your daughter, you're extra protective. You know what kind of people are out there. It's a total different thing than, a father and saying, when you come to the door to date my daughter and have her back at 10. Yeah. It's a completely different thing online, right? Because you don't even see these people.
Right.
They're having direct access and communication and they can be not who they pretend to be.
Typically, they're not at
And
this
usually
point.
not.
Yeah.
And it just goes so much further. How do you protect against something like that? So I might sit here and say, as having two boys, nah, I don't go as far as restricting on some of those areas. Maybe, in a sense, that's a privilege. It's a boy privilege that I don't worry so much.
So I've had these kinds of mishaps with my older son as well, where
Talk
he has
about
he has his own computer, and I have screen monitoring software on his computer. I actually have a key logging screen monitoring software on
You're
his
a brave father.
computer.
How old is he again? You are very brave.
He's 16. Yeah, I've had it on there for a while, since he was about 14, and I rarely check it, but every now and then I do, and I go back and I check his screenshots, and I go back and I check his history, and there have been some conversations that I've had in the past. It's like, hey, you want me to show this to your mother?
Yeah, I've done that one too. You want me
No,
to show this?
no, no. So
So do you think he actually stops in response to that, or do you think he gets better at hiding it? Does he delete his cookies or use incognito mode or a proxy server? Are you challenging him? I mean, you're a smart guy. You're going to have a smart son.
So
are you playing a chess game that ultimately?
Yes and no. Yes and no. So that goes along with the education and social etiquette of it, where um, we talk about the act itself, and what you can't unsee, because there's a lot of things that you can't unsee. There's a lot of there's a lot of different addictions that are online. Anything that's going to fire your brain,
That dopamine gets you every time.
Get you. And we have those conversations, but at the same time, we have conversations about. Um, so hey, here's a smaller one. We have conversations about cussing in text. So um, if you and I cuss at each other, nobody hears it, nobody cares, not anywhere. It's not, you can't look it up, whatever. I've had it.
I curse like a sailor.
Well, I've had instances where my children have cussed online, and it might be in a group chat, or it might be this, or it might be something as simple as a GTFO, or something like that.
The F-bomb is a big one.
Well, we've actually had parents that have seen these conversations, and now it looks like your kid is not. Your kid's a bad kid because now they're
right. And it reflects on you.
So I've actually had conversations with my children, not about not cussing, but about not making it permanent. Because if you cuss online, guess what? Back to your point, that is there forever. There's some text message, or there's some place where you can look that up, and it is there forever. So that we have conversations about when to do something online, when not to do something online, because there's trying to tell my kids not to cuss. Unfortunately, they're around it everywhere. Not just me. I don't have a filthy mouth, especially around my kids.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, there are times that happens. But there's a social etiquette of, don't write this stuff somewhere. Don't put your ideas on that. Another issue that I had with one of my kids is there were these what is that? These petitions.
Okay.
And she kept signing up for these petitions, like this petition to save the whales, or this petition to save dogs, or this. And
it's part of growing up and wanting to do something
absolutely,
to help the world.
Yeah, but then we have this conversation about, hey, do you know who put this together? Do you know where this information is coming from? Do you know the money that's behind it to fund it? You don't know any of that. Stay off the petitions. Like, yes, it might be a good petition, but you're 13 or you're 14.
What do you know about it?
Right. And if there's something bad that comes up, guess who's going to deal with it? It ain't you. It's going to be me, because you are a minor. And then I'm going to have to go back to that. So the Trust But Verify found that out. The Trust But Verify found out the cussing on text messages. The Trust But Verify found out that Quora thing. And it's not that I limit them from doing those things, but so the difference between you and I is you say, okay, here, don't do X, Y, and Z. I'm giving them channels to do X, Y, and Z, so at least I know where they're going.
Sure.
And that, for me, that helps me trust but verify a little bit easier.
I think everybody's going to have their own style, but and speaking of cursing, I curse. I curse a lot. I curse when I'm making jokes. I'll have my kids rolling and there are things coming out, and I play that old, listen, I'm not saying you can't use these words, but you can't use them now. Nobody wants to hear a kid like that. It reflects on me.
It's the social
so
etiquette.
You guys keep it out. Do I sometimes hear my 13-year-old drop the F-bomb and I'm like, hey,
Right. Whoa.
It's a difficult thing, but I don't find that cursing itself is, you go back a couple of generations. It was like, I had an aunt who you couldn't say the word so. She thought it was the worst word. Somebody would say something, you'd say so. She thought that was just terrible.
Yeah.
And of course, being a kid, I wanted to say so to her all the time. That's what I did.
Yeah. My mom didn't let me say crap.
Yeah.
Because it was too close.
Yeah.
And it meant the same thing. That's what happened in my household. If there was any word that meant the same thing, it was still a curse. And you tried to avoid those things.
It makes sense. And I mean, as a parent, I definitely don't want my kid going around dropping the F-bomb. I'm like, what the F is going on in here? And I'll be like, whoa, we're at Christmas, guy. I don't want to deal with those kind of things. But I don't put the same, prohibitions on the word. I just explain to them it's an adult thing. A lot of the rapport that I have with my kids is I'm like, can you just be a kid a little bit longer? I understand. We went through the porn thing, and I'm just, we had to talk about, this isn't really it. This is acting. This is something totally different. This is marketed and lit, and this is not what's really happening. Don't get this in your head. But more importantly,
and that's another thing.
You got your whole life for this.
Yeah.
Right now, let's just hold on to a little bit more innocence. I'm asking you not to. And then I trust but verify. If I see you, I'm like, hey. I give the oldest one the look, hey. And he'll look at me and I'm like, you can stay off that. He's like, yeah, and go off. I try not to embarrass them. I mean, it is a part of human nature. Sure. I mean, when we were younger, there were nudie magazines, and your parents might even have had them and you went and found them. And, I mean, you're going to be exploring things and curious. And I guess that's why I don't try to prevent. I would spend forever. I could lock down everything I could.
And that's the thing is the exposure is constantly there now where you had to go and search for that magazine, or you had a friend that their, mom's aunt's uncle had one and you got to look at one. But now it's, like you said, the internet is so hypersexualized.
And it goes so much further than what you would think of in a magazine.
You go through a TikTok and you're like, whoa, okay. And
I think it begets itself too.
Yeah.
So when you see these young girls getting attention and they're wearing their bathing suit, and you're going to want to emulate it. You want the same popularity. You want the same thing. Same with the guys and certain behaviors. We talked about. There was one instance where a lady I know, her daughter had gotten into some trouble. She didn't even have a smartphone. She was very restricted from it. However, there had shown up some TikTok videos after a slumber party of them, doing what, children might do at a slumber party. And she was very adamant, I wouldn't let them on the phone, and they posted this up, and you're right about the permanence and so forth. But, it's not a problem that they had the slumber party or that they even behaved in such a way.
Right.
It came when they posted it, they shared it. And there is a certain human need to connect. One of the biggest problems I have with Facebook or any of those is they're driven by likes, and it can really skew what you really think, because you could post something up that's ridiculous and 10,000 people can agree with you.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the majority agrees with that, or that's a great thing that you said.
Right.
There could be a lot of reasons for that. So you can get a false sense of this is what people like. This is what makes it popular. And it's really not. And the worst part is as I said to this woman, one thing you can remind your daughter is when you see those pictures later, you're going to have this feeling. We all been there, right? We were awkward in school. Yeah. You look back at some old picture and you say to yourself,
like,
oh my goodness, I wore that, or I did that. And that's going to follow them 10 times more, because It's not just a photo that got stuffed away in some book. It's up there and it can follow them over and over. And it's just to remind them, it's just like those shoes, or when you were into Hello Kitty and now how embarrassed you would be. Be careful what you share.
That's right.
It's not be careful what you're doing. If they want to have the slumber party and dance around and sing, and they happen to be wearing whatever they were wearing for the slumber party, there wasn't a problem with that. It was when they decided to post it online. Yep. And the ease of doing that, and the dopamine rush of having all of these people.
Well, that's something I think that we need to talk about. We need to make a full thing on is what does online addiction look like and how does it work? Because what most people, I think, don't understand is just how addictive these things are.
They're created to be that addictive.
They are absolutely created. You know, Sean Parker from Facebook readily admitted that he has no clue what Facebook is doing to kids.
Wait, no, it goes further than that. So you get a dopamine rush anytime you get a tool or something that what is going to benefit your survival, right? So you're out in the woods and you're like, man, you know, these bears are coming up. Hey, there's a long, sharp, pointy stick. And if I tie this rock to it, now I got a spear, you know what? I feel good. I feel good I got this spear. That is a reward system set up in your brain to help you for survival, which has been completely hijacked by video games. That's why you constantly get an upgraded weapon. You get, you know, this sword, and then you get the better one, and you get
to pay for this.
Because it's
the bosses get harder, and you know, it goes back to that old song. You know, I used to do a little, but a little wouldn't do it, so the little got more and more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is really the social media, internet, gaming, all of that addiction that has with it. And you know, there's a part of it of this whole lifestyle that I don't think that, and that's the balance, right? Is you can't say no because that's their future. I've been addicted to video games when I was growing up.
Yeah, I think everybody could say they've gone a little too far.
You know, but I didn't come out a bad person. I didn't do anything evil. I didn't do anything terrible. I just played too many video games. And you know that wasn't a bad thing. It actually helped my career. It spawned me into a lot of different avenues that maybe I wouldn't have gone down. The first server that I ever hosted was a video game server, so my buddies and I could play on it.
Absolutely.
And it helped me learn tech. It helped me learn ports. It helped me learn firewalls. It helped me learn routers. So I'm not, you know.
So you're saying gaming's a gateway to IT.
It can be. And, you know, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but there is a line where you have to say consumption and creation and addiction, you know, where are those balances? I think we need to maybe talk about that a lot in another podcast. You know, one thing that happened to me a while back too was I had a delivery guy that came up to our office to deliver some computers. And he flagged me down. He started talking to me. He's like, "Hey, what's up? You work here?" I was like, "Yeah." And he said, "You know, my son has been playing video games a lot, and I've been trying to get him to go more into the tech field. And you know, what advice do you have for me on that?" And I didn't give him the answer that he wanted. But I think that I actually gave him the answer that was needed. And I said, "Your son likes video games, huh?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "How much does he play on his video games?" He's like, "I don't know, man, maybe 6-7 hours a day." I said, "You do that every day?" I said, "Yeah." Or he says, "Yeah." I said, "Man, you know what you need to do for your son?
Get him a webcam.
You need to double down on his passion and actually support him in something that he's loving right now and let him give the full shot that he's got." And he says that he wants to get into game streaming and you need to buy him a webcam. You need to double down. You need to support him, learn about it, you know, get the influencers for him, help out any way that you can. And let him make that decision, because if he rises, it's going to be great for him. He's going to love it and he's going to stay with that passion. And if he doesn't, there's always IT. There's always something else that you
He's
can
going to gain stuff from it.
But and he just kind of looked at me. I said, "Yeah, double down on that, because this is his future. Your future is in IT. His future might be in games. His future might be in game design. His future might be in streaming. His future might be in video game playing, where you actually test video game testing. these are all viable careers. Sure. And he kind of looked at me and very vaguely thanked me for the answer, because it was definitely not what he was looking for. But I think that he kind of started to think about that. So when I say that, game addiction and things of that nature are bad, at the same time, if it's really a passion, it is a thing that you can tap into.
Well, people have been,
but you kind of got to know which one is which. Like, is it a passion? Is it a hobby? Is it an addiction? Is it all of the above? How am I going to?
Well, it goes further, right? So, basketball. Yeah, everybody wants to be a basketball star. Do you discourage them? We can sit here and talk about, wow, man, you're inside playing the computer the constant time. Why don't you go outside and play some basketball?
Yeah.
Right. But, a couple of years back, it was like, oh, you're not going to be a basketball star. You're not many of them make it. Really, our job as parent is to support the dreams and understand that, we really don't know what all those things can fold out to be. I find it interesting in looking at a group of peers that usually those things that you were passionate about when you were a kid, things that you just naturally gravitated to, tend to be the more successful career paths later. They're the things that you stick through, that you're interested in.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. It probably was a shock, because there is this old mentality of the good and bad. And I take it back that, when they were doing written paper, there was somebody complaining about, nobody would know how to use the chalk slates anymore, and how to properly clean them. Everybody's going to cut down all the trees and use all this paper. And then now that we switch from paper, it's like nobody's going to know how to handwrite anymore.
That's right. Nobody can write in cursive.
It's a general, but I've heard some things on that. The Constitution's in cursive, so if you can't write in it, can you read in it? I was sitting down working on signatures with my kids, because they didn't quite understand that it wasn't printing and that it was stylized. It was unique to you.
Right.
So there are aspects that aren't being taught in school. But really, do we need them? I've said it to you before. I can teach my kid how to drive a car and say, you got to follow these rules. And, in 5 more years, they could have hover cars or self-driving cars. He won't even need to know. It's not going to be the same anywy, no matter how I look at it.
Yeah.
So is it wasted effort? I really think it's
stick
important.
shifts.
Yeah, there you go. You can barely buy them now.
Yeah.
So we've covered a whole lot of things, and we've got a lot more topics to come back on.
That's another pro tip.
What you got?
You want to keep your kid off the cell phone in the car? Give an old car with a stick shift.
Yeah.
I did that with my son. He's not on the phone in his car because he got shifted gears.
That's not a bad advice. I mean, if you can find them anymore, but I mean, you're probably going to get full circle to where you can text and watch movies and cuddle in the back, and the car just drives you there. We just don't know. But I think the important thing that we're saying in the main one is be engaged. Be aware. Don't stick your head in the sand. Have some kind of plan that you're
definitely
going to go forward.
Have a communication plan on how you handle it and
what the expectations
are, and then you got to have a follow-through plan.
What happens if they don't follow?
And that's so. You want to hear a really funny story?
Yeah, end this off on a funny.
All right,
story.
I'll end this off on a funny story. So I was Trad was maybe 4, and we were out playing in a park, and all these kids were playing out in the park, and it was time to go. And if anyone knows my son, he plays hard. He plays real hard,
really.
And
honestly.
he did not want to go, and I was like, "Hey, buddy, it's time to go." And he looked at me and he yelled. He was like, "Ah!" And I put up my hand. I didn't say a word. I just put up my hand at it. And he's like, "Ah!" And he screamed at me again. "Ah!" He screamed at me again, and I did this.
Count down.
and he put his head down, and he just walked over to the car. And a mother saw me do this because I didn't yell at him at all.
Right. You didn't react. You didn't feed it. It didn't become a combat. You weren't entered into combat.
I did not. I was absolutely just stone-faced, just let out all of that energy, whatever that was going on. And this mother who was standing by watched me, and she said, "How did you do that?" And I said, "You really want to know?" And she's like, "Yeah." I said, "One hurts." And she looked at me in horror. Not that I've ever beaten my children or anything like that.
Terrible, yeah.
But I mean, bad things happen at
Discipline
1.
is important.
Bad things happen at 1, and he knew it. And when I got to 2, he did not want to get to 1 because bad stuff was going to happen at 1 because I you have to have that follow through. And if you don't
A
make
little
those
healthy fear of
boundaries,
your dad is a good
if
thing.
you don't
Yeah.
make those boundaries, then they
I'm still a
will
little
just keep
scared of my
pushing
dad.
those boundaries. My dad's been gone a long time. I'm still scared.
Yeah, there's just something about it. And I caught it, just a very minor anecdote to yours. Lucius, he's getting up that age. He likes to mouth off a little bit. I don't know what it was. I came home the other day and he kind of just pops off something. And it was just completely uncalled for. It's kind of like, hey, can you take care of this? But I am, kind of.
Yeah.
And I just shot him that look, like, yeah, who you talking to? He's like, I'm sorry, I do, it was and I just find it really funny that you've got to have a little healthy fear of your parents. I mean, it's not so much that you're disciplined or you're ever gonna do something harmful to them,
Yeah.
but it's that understanding. I can make it things a little bit difficult. All this you got that came from somewhere.
Well, and honestly, kids want, and need those boundaries
Structure, yeah.
to feel like you care.
Absolutely. And I think that's a perfect place to end it.
Absolutely.
For the first episode of Ask Tech Dad. And we thank everybody for tuning in. Hope you liked it. If you have any comments or
anything you want to talk, anything you want us to talk about or cover as a tech dad, leave it.
We can talk.
Leave it in the messages.
Yeah, we absolutely can.
Follow us, ding us, all of that stuff on the interwebs that you love. If you're still with us, appreciate you.
Or how do they say it? Like and subscribe. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Y'all have a great day.
And then we talk after.